Chapter 39, in which not knowing the New York Yankees won the 1943 World Series can get your ass shot. Of all the Garland videos we made that week, the story of how he met Madeleine was my favorite. Throughout the video, the sun cast a dark shadow over the back seat, and you only see the details of the old man's face when he'd get excited and lean forward. Behind him, out the rear window, the sun shines bright, and on both sides of the road are endless fields of yellow flowers. If Best Cinematography in a YouTube video were an Academy Award category, Parker would have walked away with the Oscar that year. "I tapped on the first door I came to," Garland said, "but no one answered, so I started to bang harder and harder until a light came on upstairs. There were French phrases written on the back of our maps, and I practiced saying, 'Je suis un pilote américain,' while waiting for someone to answer the door. I heard footsteps inside, and the turn of a lock. Then the door cracked open just enough for one eye to peek out. A girl inside said, 'Monsieur?' I said, 'Je suis un pilote américain,' much louder than I'd meant to, and that one eye widened, and the door flung open, and the girl grabbed me by the collar and yanked me into the house. She was tall, or at least she looked tall from the floor, and she was thin, too thin from the rationing. I watched her look up and down the street before gently closing the door and turning back to me, her white nightgown fluttering in the breeze I'd let in. And in that moment, as she pushed a strand of long brown hair from her eyes, I was quite certain I'd died in that plane crash and gone to heaven, because I was looking at an angel. Then she leaned down close and whispered, 'You shit-for-brains American fool, are you trying to wake every German in town?' The old man chuckled and said, 'Right about then I began to doubt her angelic credentials.' She scowled at me and demanded, 'Why? Why are you in this town, hitting this door at 4 a.m? I asked her, 'Why do you speak English?' She jabbed a bony finger into my chest and said, 'No, I ask the questions now.' That's when I started to think I'd have been safer outside with the Nazis. I pointed at my leg and said, 'I'm injured.' Thought maybe then I'd get a little compassion, but she just mocked me. 'Oh, you hurt your leg,' she said. 'So what? So you must bring the entire Nazi army to my door?' I told her I didn't know it was her door. It was just the first door I came to, and if she wanted me to, I'd leave. But she shushed me with a raised finger. I watched her pace the room, every few seconds peeking out the curtains, then glaring at me with disdain. But after a few minutes, when she decided the Nazis were still asleep and not on their way to her door, her face softened, and she bent down to look at my ankle. She said, 'So mine was the first door you came to. I guess today is my lucky day.' Then she added, 'Your ankle. It is badly broken.' I looked down at my ankle, felt a sharp blow to the side of my head, and don't remember much after that. Later, she confessed to hitting me upside the head with a bronze candlestick. I woke up the next morning when the sun came streaming through the window of the attic bedroom she'd put me in. To this day, I still have no idea how she even got me up there. I doubt she weighed 100 pounds. Thanks to her, my head throbbed with every beat of my heart, which I suppose would have been okay had it somehow taken my mind off my shattered ankle, but instead, I ended up with excruciating pain on both ends of my body. I sat up in bed best I could and rubbed my eyes, and found her sitting in a chair at the end of my bed with her legs crossed and a Luger .P08 pointed right at my heart. It might have been sexy had it not been so damn terrifying. She said, 'Good morning, monsieur,' and leaned forward in her chair. I said, 'It'd be a hell of a lot better if you weren't pointing that gun at me.' She looked at the gun like she'd forgotten it was in her hand, then looked at me and said, "A girl cannot be too safe, no? What with Nazis all over town and American aviators knocking on doors at all hours of the night?" I told her I supposed not, and she smiled and said, "Now you will answer my questions, because I must leave soon, and if you are a German spy, I will need to kill you before I go." I tried to laugh, but nothing much came out, so I told her, "I'm not a damn spy. I told you I'm an American pilot. The Germans shot me down last night, and I spent 4 hours floating in some freezing-ass river before hobbling through town to your door. Are you suggesting I'd break my leg on purpose just to throw you off?" She shrugged and said, "Germans can be weird." This time a little laugh came out, and I said, "I'll give you that. Now get on with it. Ask me your questions so you can stop pointing that damn gun at me." She said, "Okay, tell me who won your World Series last year." I told her I hadn't a clue, and she cocked the Luger. "Now hold on," I said. "I'd never even heard of baseball until I joined the Army last year. Some crazy preacher back home said the world was ending, and my parents believed him. I spent most of my childhood living in the woods waiting for Jesus to come back." She considered this long enough for sweat beads to form on my forehead before finally lowering the gun. "All right," she said. "Even a German would not make up a story that weird." I exhaled and said, "Now, aren't you glad you didn't shoot me? You'd have never gotten these sheets clean." She smiled and said, "I wanted to believe you, but it is my job to be cautious." I sat up a little more and asked, "Now will you tell me how you speak English so well?" She pointed at the radio in the corner of the room and said, "We learned some in school, but mostly I learned from listening to the BBC. When the Germans came in 1940, they confiscated some radios, though not all. But this January, someone shot and killed a German soldier, and the Nazis arrested several men from town and confiscated all the radios they could find. They did not find mine, though, because this is a hidden room. Now I have one of the few radios left in town. Every night I listen, and in the morning I give a report to the resistance leaders." I shook my head and said, "You're a member of the French resistance?" She stood up and said, "Do not act so astonished, monsieur. Just because I am young and a woman does not mean I cannot do my part." I held up my hands in surrender and said, "You're right. I'm sorry. So can you get me back across the channel to England?" She shook her head no. "We have helped many pilots back across the channel," she said, "and some we have sent south to Spain. But the invasion will be soon. Probably it is best now to hide, and the Allies will come to you." I knew we were in a strategic Nazi-controlled town, and I wanted to tell her when the Allies did come rolling through, it wasn't going to be like some damned homecoming parade, but with my ankle I wasn't going anywhere anyway, so I didn't argue. I said, "Well, I sure am lucky I knocked on the door of a family of French resistors. Where are your parents?" The mischievous smile left her face for a moment, and she said, "My parents are dead, monsieur. My mother before the Germans came, my father after." I told her I was sorry, and we were both quiet for a long time before she nodded towards some milk and bread on the table next to me. "It is not much," she said, "but it is all I have for now. I will try and bring something more when I return this evening. When I tell the leaders I have an American pilot in my house, they will provide." I looked over at the food and said, "Wait, you made me breakfast before you knew if you'd have to shoot me?" Her smile returned and she said, "I would have let you eat breakfast either way. We are not animals." Then she stood to leave and said, "There is a bathroom down the hall. Stay upstairs today and do not look out the windows. The Germans know I live alone, and so does the LaRue boy next door who watches my window hoping to see me changing clothes. If they inspected the house again and found the radio, it would be bad, though not as bad as if they found an American pilot. She turned to leave, and I said, "Wait, where are you going?" She held up a couple of books and said, "To school, monsieur. It is Tuesday. Then I go to piano lessons." "Wait, hold up," I said, interrupting Garland's story. She was taking piano lessons in the middle of World War II? "Yep," Garland said. "Hell, kids in St. Lo went to school on the Monday before D-Day. That little town went about its business as usual. Folks went to work, and kids went to school. There were just Nazis everywhere. They even had movies and a theater until January when someone shot that German soldier in the street. Then the Nazis clamped down on him a little more." "That's weird," I said. "Right?" "Not too weird," Garland said. "They had me in Salisbury posing as an oboe instructor during the Rhodesian Bush War. I was there for 2 of the worst years and never had a student miss a lesson. Course, I told him I was the oboe player for the Rolling Stones, so all the kids thought I was the real shit." "I thought you taught bassoon," Parker said. "Bassoon, saxophone, oboe," Garland said. "I taught all the woodwinds, dear." "Okay, so she left for school," I said, trying to get Garland back on track. "Right," the old man said. "She turned to leave, but I didn't want her to go. So I blurted out, 'How old are you?' She stopped and said, 17, monsieur." I said, "Well, I'm only 19, so how about you stop calling me monsieur?" She said, "Will I call you G.I. Joe?" I said, "You can call me Garland." She smiled and said, "Garland. Okay, Garland. You can call me Madeleine." Then she turned to leave again, and I said, "Madeleine, wait." She looked back, and I said, "I think I love you." Madeleine sighed and shook her head and said, "Yes, you told me this 12 times last night after I knocked you out. Now get some rest." The video abruptly cuts off here, but not before you hear Parker shout, "My God, Edwin Green, stop the car!"